Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right now so you never miss an episode of Operation Truth. Send us an email, ask your questions, and very possibly we'll address your question on the air.
Operation Truth, the show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Hi, everyone. This is Lou Palumbo and Tom Fuentes, my co-host. This is Operation Truth. We want to remind you, please contact us via email, operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. Please communicate with us. Please become part of this discussion. We're trying to course correct this country. Tom and I have no agenda. Actually, we do. It's what's best for our young people. That's what we're concerned about. I do have to say one thing. Google, and I mentioned this in another episode, wanted to censor me because I made a statement in the following manner. And when you hear it again, you'll understand we're not campaigning for anybody. But I'm asking a certain demographic by age. Donald Trump, Biden, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, the Clintons, anybody who's past their prime, so to speak. And I think when you hit 80, you got to start to look to pass the torch. You know, we all go through this rite of passage. And what I learned about life is that we have windows, they open and they close. Education is a window that opens and closes. Tom and I had a window. It was our professional law enforcement careers, regardless of how long and how short, that window open and closes. We're on another window that's open right now that we're hoping is going to bear a lot of fruit and make a lot of sense for a lot of people here that I think need some unbiased information and discussions where you'll be able to determine that our only concern is about you. Because guys, I got to tell you, I'm okay. I know Tom's okay. I know Christian Briggs is okay. You know, he's brilliant also, this man. He's so damn smart. I can't keep track of the finance. I've never been a finance guy. Let me be honest with you. I'm not going to mislead you. But Christian's kind of in a league of his own, the same way Tom is. Their ability to speak intelligently to topics. Every episode, I like to remind you about this border issue, and you have to look at what's going on in your country. The funny part about this whole discussion today is the loudest voices in opposition to the border, independent of Abbott, for example, are Democrats. They're destroying our major cities. Between this, I would say, policy of allowing the criminal element to operate with impunity and the immigration issue, we're not going to have any more major city, guys. You're going to have to wrap your arms around this. These places that you once visited that were just dripping in culture or told a story about a state or a jurisdiction are going to be gone. You know, I can only tell you, I'm born and raised in the city of New York. I'm heartbroken. We have people sleeping on Broadway and 45th Street at the Roosevelt Hotel, this beautiful historic hotel. They have put barricades on the sidewalk and people are sleeping on the sidewalk. They have no place to put them. I just want to remind you of something interesting, though. A little more than a year ago, Eric Adams, who I guess he's had divine intervention, was at the Port Authority terminal, shaking their hands as they came off the bus. This is New York. We invite everybody. We want everybody here. We take care of everybody. We're a sanctuary city. Now he's bumping up against 100,000 migrants, no place to put them. And as he claims $9 million a day to support them, forecasting as much as $12 billion, openly critical of the president's immigration policy. Then this guy turns around and he asks the president for $1 billion. I don't know how well thought out you were on that one, but he's not alone. He's trying to transport them into contiguous counties. Nassau, next Suffolk County. Blakeman, the county executive of Nassau, said, we're not a sanctuary county. You're a sanctuary city. Suffolk County, same thing. He's now pressing the governor, Hochul, to, I guess, authorize counties, other jurisdictions throughout the state that they have to take migrants. They don't want them. Guys, I said this to you an episode ago. We had 3 sexual assaults, 2 in Erie County. One was a rape, and then another rape in Delaware, migrants. Something people don't know, and I was talking to my colleagues today, Little Birdie, what they call Manhattan South. The crime stats involving migrants is off the charts, and they're commingling them with everybody else. So we're not separating them out so people understand the scope of this problem. Sexual assaults, conventional assaults, robberies, thefts on all levels. It's just incredible. And now we're trying to transport them into communities. One of the facilities in Queens is called Creedmoor. The Organized Crime Control Bureau for a very long time used it as their base of operations after it was closed as a result of Geraldo Rivera's expose on Willowbrook back in the 70s. They now shut that because OCCB was absorbed differently into the New York City Police Department. It's vacant. They now want to put them there. The residents in Queens are going through the roof. Interesting story, guys, which I should have mentioned last episode that I'd like Tom to jump on as well. They're going to Staten Island. Now, if there's a conservative borough of the 5 in the city of New York, it's Staten Island. Cops, firemen, blue-class people, a lot of organized crime people, a lot of Albanian organized crime people. I don't know why they're looking to go there, but we're at a point of desperation here. What is the government? Turns a deaf ear to them. Who do you have to hear it from that this migration issue is a failed policy, along with your policy of withdrawal from Afghanistan, as well as your domestic policy shutting off the Keystone Pipeline the first or second day into office? I keep asking, who is this supposed to benefit, by the way, when you did that? We were not positioned or prepared to transition into electric. And by the way, all these electric batteries are charged through steam turbines, which are fueled first fossil fuel and nuclear. Oh, there's that bad word I keep telling you about, nuclear. That's the wave we need to go in. That's the direction, guys. And I remind everybody, for those living in California, I believe Diablo Canyon has been decommissioned. Good reason. It's geologically unsound. But you could go to contiguous states, Arizona, Nevada, collaborate with the government, go out into the deserts, less populated, right? Not as, just more remote, more geologically sound, and build these state-of-the-art reactors, guys. And you can light up half the country with them. We just don't want to problem solve, guys. We just want to chase our tail. I do have to tell you something else you'll get a kick out of. You can't hire anybody illegal in the country. Many of them are working off the books, by the way, getting paid in cash, not paying taxes. Don't you get caught doing that, because that's a felony and you will go to jail. Maybe Hunter Biden maybe look like he's going to get a pass, but you won't get a pass. In California, he's now generating some form of unemployment for the illegals because they're not eligible to work. I don't even know what to say about that. The number I heard was $400. Someone out there knows the number. Please email it in, operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. Communicate with us, guys. I want to bring Tom in. I want to hear Tom's perspective instead of me continuing to rant at you, because these issues just charge me up for one reason. I have young children, like many of you have young children. Look at what we're leaving them. They're entitled to something better than this. In fact, all of the public in the country, you're entitled to something better than this. I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I want the best person by qualification, whose heart is in the right place, who understands the importance of leadership, who's inspirational, who can speak to you the way John Kennedy did back in 1960. Tom, I want to bring you in, give you some insight on what I just said, your own feelings. I know you have them as well as I do. And I yield the floor to you, sir.
Okay, well, first of all, Lou, I have a number of friends who contact me and say they really appreciate your ranting, because what you say makes sense to them, and they appreciate hearing it presented accurately, passionately, and instructively to everybody. And so I just wanted you to know that people whose opinion I have high regard for have high regard for what you say and how you say it. So just wanted to pass that on.
You and I are like-minded on this topic here. We just want to fix things, Tom. Let's be honest. You know the way out, and so do I. It's through common sense, logic, reason, civility, decency, respect. All the words that have left the discussion. Let's be candid. That's the thing. You and I are very different, Tom. We had similarity in our walks through life, especially in local law enforcement. Your life went one way, mine went the other. We brushed up against the other as we've spoken to people about, I don't know how many years ago at CNN. And guys, to make you laugh, CNN wanted Tom and I to do a show. They missed the boat on that one. But where we're like-minded, Tom, I mean, you are just an abundance of knowledge. And this can't be about us blowing smoke up each other's keister. The audience won't like that. But the reality of it is,
it would have been a good show. I think what they were looking for was Operation BS.
Well, we won't go any further in talking about CNN, because it went from a very credible news agency in the 90s and even through some of the 2000s to where it went the direction it did. But I go back and say this, Tom, you and I are like-minded. We're trying to make this place better than we found it. Unfortunately, not enough people are thinking that way. I want to just say one other thing, Tom, and I'm going to give the floor back to you. My comment driven towards a certain demographic, regardless of political affiliation, passing the torch is because they're in a complete disconnect with this younger generation of people that I want to go off on now, X and Z, who is so quickly brand our children, who have nothing to believe in coming out of the womb. We've destroyed the credibility of every institution you and I once believed in, Tom. So I want to yield the floor back to you instead of continuing on this rant.
Well, you've talked about your respect for President Kennedy, and you recall during his inauguration speech where he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Fast forward to everybody that has a student loan that isn't paid off wants the government to pay it off. Classic example that goes against what President Kennedy had said that people should aspire to, and the philosophy. They took out these loans, agreed to pay them back. Now they want the government to bail them out. Meantime, people that paid their loans are angry because they paid them. Now they're looking at, wait a minute, I did the right thing. These people didn't, and they're going to be rewarded. And that's kind of where we're at now with a lot of the rewards that are going out are going to people that don't really deserve it. And I think that's a huge issue for the public of why should I pay my fair taxes? You're letting all these other people get away with not doing it. Why should I obey the law? You're letting all these other people have a pass. That just has permeated our society to the point where people just feel alienated from their own country, from their own government. And I think that, at the time of the Nixon election in 1968, where his vice president, Spiro Agnew, who later got prosecuted, went to prison, but anyway, they were trying to awaken the silent majority. The country had all of this violence, these violent demonstrations, the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, the riots there, the other riots in the street over the Vietnam War. And you had all of this going on, and the silent majority rose up, elected Nixon because they wanted law and order. They wanted peace restored in the community, violence to be restricted, people to become law-abiding citizens. Now today, to even suggest that the people become law and order or law-abiding, oh, we can't have that. That's racist. That's so terrible. We don't even want to talk about that. And
Can
so
I just
go ahead.
That you commented on the students want the government to repay their loans. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, who's actually going to pay those loans, right, back to the lending institutions are going to be the taxpayers.
Exactly.
That's my point.
Well,
so
every dime the government spends is the taxpayers.
Thank you. So everybody understands who's listening to this. When we talk about student loan repayment, the government's not repaying them. The lenders on these who are on the hook, whether it's a bank, I have to make you laugh, Tom. I paid my student loan back twice because when I graduated college, I went to law enforcement. I was in a LEAP program, law enforcement assistance program, which forgave our loan, number one. And I was paying for that banker's trust, was either absorbed or went out of business. 20 years later, they're coming at me about my student loan. I'm going for round two. Forget about paying for it the first time. And I only borrowed a couple of $1,000s back then. The tuition at St. John's was $900 a year, which is another discussion. How did education become big business? But the interesting part about this, Tom, when we start to talk about student loan forgiveness, that's the taxpayers forgiving those student loans, not the government.
Okay, if I could explain something, Lou, what the LEAP grant program, the LEAP loan program stood for Law Enforcement Education Program. And the way that worked, because I had a LEAP loan also, the way that worked is, you got so much money for each year of school, tuition fees, other expenses. Then afterward, for each year you became in the law enforcement system, whether you became a police officer or dispatcher or analyst, but if you worked in law enforcement, for each full year in law enforcement, 1 year of the loan was forgiven. So if you did 4 full years, your loan was gone. but you were paying it back by your work in law enforcement by bringing it back. And the idea in those days, great idea, was we need to professionalize police officers, law enforcement. We need to have them be educated. The more education they have, the more schooling they get, the more likely they are to be honest, fair, what we want in a professional police officer. So myself, you, many others had LEAP grants, but we paid them off by working in law enforcement for so many years afterward to pay back those things. So it wasn't free money handed to us by the taxpayer. There was an obligation. You either paid it back or you went to work in law enforcement.
Tom, the other question I want to tap onto also is because it's become cost prohibitive to send children to college. And I'm just wondering, where's the accounting in this word oversight with all these educational institutions that are taking in ridiculous amounts of money? I have friends that send their children to Bucknell. I think it's like $70,000. Boston University, $70,000. St. John's, which was $900 in yesteryear, and that was in 1969. It's 50 grand now. How did this become big business? And it's not because they're building on top of building on top of where is this money going? I'd like for them to have to disclose, where this money is, and once again, is this word accountability.
Yeah. Well, the studies done on these institutions, whether it's Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, or some of these other good colleges, whether you're talking Boston College or some of the other ones, those schools they raised their tuition and fees because they knew the students now had these loans. They could pay more because they weren't paying for it. So the school is receiving more money, putting it into their endowment programs. Then they raise the salaries of their professors. Then they start creating all these other programs, diversity and creating doctorate majors who are going to run these programs. And they don't need a lot of these programs have nothing to do with the academic program of the university. It's a lot of the woke stuff, if you will, even now. So that's what happened, is that the money going to the students in the way of a loan, which they thought they would have to pay back, but the money going in a loan, much of that's going so that the university can become richer. And they did. So now you have this thing where the students are saying, wait a minute, I owe $100,000. I majored in basket weaving. I can't get a job. Nobody wants to hire me. I owe all this money. And then along comes the current administration. Okay, we'll set it up. You don't have to pay it back. And that's how this came about. In the meantime, you don't hear the schools objecting to it. You didn't hear any of the schools saying, that they were co-signing these loans for the students. If the student doesn't pay it back, the university will back to the federal government. Oh, no. University is going to spend it how they see fit on all their extraneous programs. And the university could care less, number one, if the student pays it back. And number two, if the student even graduates. So if they get that money for the first couple of years out of a student and the student drops out, so what? We'll get more people in with more loan money, more endowments for the university, more money in their bank accounts. And that's what's kind of helped ruin, in a way, higher education at these top level schools.
Tom, I'll tell you, once again, we've compromised the integrity of an institution. This time it's the learning institutions. You don't know what to say to people in regards to putting their children through the educational process. What's being suggested today is that instead of sending your child to a 4-year school, like a Bucknell or Boston University or Duke or any of these phenomenal learning institutions, send them to a 2-year school, get an associate degree, then transfer in. One thing I will tell you, some of the states, like Florida, for example, they have this if you're a resident, they've got a whole different tuition structure, which makes it far more cost effective. I know it firsthand because my wife's 2 older daughters went to FSU. We helped them, but they got a lot of financial consideration. What's so disturbing, once again, is who's getting this one in the shorts? Our young kids, our children. You and I, we have our educations. Let's be honest. We grew up in different times. This isn't the America you and I grew up in either, Tom. Maybe the exercise is to bring it back a little bit back to where it was and still keep the parts of our growth which deal with just accepting more people. I don't like hearing that this is a racist nation, because we're not a racist nation, Tom. That's just a lie. Is there racism here? Yeah, it's global. There's racists everywhere, period. I don't want to hear we're homophobic. People don't care who you sleep with. The mistake that's being made is you keep telling people who you sleep with, and everybody keeps going like, I don't care. This is such an interesting discussion today in this country. But once again, I go back and say, who's stirring the pot? Who's pitting us against each other? And the common denominator to this is the media and some of the elected officials with their rhetoric. Tom, I like to believe that our country is the most resilient country in the history of civilization. And you and I both understand your ability to stop on a dime and change direction is critical if you're going to survive in life. No can't be a word in your vocabulary. I believe we can turn this around with the right leadership. Again, without getting into a whole political discussion about who should be the next president, I want the best person. What I do find interesting, though, is there isn't a single contender in the Democrat Party other than Robert Kennedy. And the young lady that's running, she unfortunately is like a non-denominator at this point. She's so low in polling. Robert Kennedy, they won't even give a look at. And no one else in this party thinks they should make a run at this office. Although we're starting to hear there's a lot of undercurrent. You wonder why we just lack the ability to be honest and truthful about issues. Tom, I think you and I have the same mindset. I don't care if you make a mistake. Learn from that mistake and you forge forward. We can't seem to get over that hurdle either. I want to continue this conversation, Tom, but I need to go to a break. And we're going to come right back. My friend, my colleague, my collaborator, my co-host, Tom Fuentes, former assistant director of the FBI, and tell Chris Schwecker I'm gunning for him. He's got to get on this show with us. We'll be right back, guys. Stay with us. This is Operation Truth. Email us at operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. Be part of this conversation, guys. It's important you all start to listen and help us change the direction this country's going. By the way, guys, you notice one thing about Tom and I? We don't speak fluff pieces. We're not here to sit and ridicule and make fun of people. We don't care about Kanye West. We don't critique this stuff. No disrespect to Kanye. Whatever issues there are with Kanye or his issues, he needs a friend, come to us. We can probably help you. Just stop listening to the knuckleheads in your world. Tom and I have brushed up against this our whole lives and our whole careers. And I've been working around the entertainment industry for more years than I choose to remember. So we'll be right back, guys. Let you go. We're going to come right back. Oh, by the way, there's a rumor in town that we may get Christian Briggs. So bear with us and stay with us.
The world is in crisis, with political unrest and financially unstable countries trying to print their way to prosperity by taking on trillions of dollars of new debt. It's incredibly concerning. That's why you need to own silver as a hedge. So call today to receive the free hard asset information kit on how easy it is to own silver. Green energy demands will possibly turbocharge silver prices to 50, 100, even 300 an ounce, according to many experts around the world. Silver is a proven hedge against inflation. Since 1971, silver has returned over 11% when averaged yearly. Silver is a proven wealth preservation for hundreds of years. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
And as I promised in prior episode, I do want to say one thing in defense of Christian. He oftentimes schedules to be with us, and then he's got a very interesting life that goes above and beyond his initial career, which is trading rare coins and commodities, things of that nature. I won't say too much about it because if Christian wants you to know about it, he'll tell you. But he's with us finally, and we need an update, Christian, as to what in the wide world of sports is going on now.
Well, where do you start? So let's talk about where the first dot, because we're always trying to connect dots. So the first dot started in 2015 when the World Economic Forum proposed a digital payment system, a platform, if you wish, that was already integrated into legislating talk. In other words, in 2014, when Obama came out with the theory behind doing what they did with crypto in a centralized system, then 2015, it took off with the World Economic Forum they embraced it overnight and said, this is exactly where we need to be going as quickly as possible. They did that in such a way to create a platform that was centralized because they saw the rapid movement and the adoption of a decentralized crypto payment, decentralized being it was open source and it allowed people to transact without any government interference with an autonomy. Okay, so anonymity was the name of the game. It still is. Nothing's changed except for the war on crypto it's clearly been upon us with the U.S. government. So fast forward 2015, World Economic Forum adopts the idea, says we need to globalize this quickly. Their assumptions were that Hillary Clinton would win the White House, so she'll be able to roll out a centralized system. The Bank of International Settlements in March of 18 created a document which, once Trump was in, they started panicking. So they came out with a white paper that showed, and I mean, it showed everything about how they were going to make this happen. January. No, let me take a step back. Hold on a second. So it was June of 20, another document came out, and that document showed that they were moving toward the central bank digital currency for all these various governments. Nations that were already members of the WEF signed on and helped collaborate. Then we had January of 21, they went and they started doing the technical analysis of it. So first they did the toolkit, which was really the systematic way in which to start to tell the nations, to tell their citizens how good this is. Number one thing they would tell people, it's efficient and it's safe. It keeps your money safer. It's more efficient. Not realizing the transactions. Hold on one second. I'm on a podcast for a while. Oh, you are? Okay, go to Lewis. So then what they did was they said January of 21, we're going to be able to implement this, and here's the toolkit to do it. So they would start convincing citizens with a propaganda that says central bank digital currencies are the way of the future because you don't have to worry about carrying cash, you won't lose your cash, and it's super efficient and safe. Sounds good. June of 23, fast forward, another document, some 60 pages, which shows the complete rollout of this. Now, in order to be able to roll this out, you have to identify each individual. There's no way that you can say, we're going to launch this and then determine who's going to use it and force feed it to them. So the first thing they did was they came out with the FEDNOW, which is a commercial banking. It used to be put together as a partner within the banking community. It's not, it's a competitor. So the FEDNOW starts to work with all different types of banks, migrates commercial accounts onto their platform, tells the banks it's going to be super fast, super great, super easy. Pretty much the word super is synonymous now with FEDNOW. Sounds super scary to me. Then part two, you need a national ID system. What comes out today? A national ID system. What's the national ID system? The national ID system is a system that called MOSIP. And let me read you what MOSIP is all about. MOSIP is a short for the Modular Open Source Identity Platform, or better known as MOSIP. Helps governments and other user organizations implement a digital foundational identity system in a cost-effective way. Excuse me. Hold on a second. All right. Nations can use MOSIP freely to build their own identity systems, being modular in its architecture. MOSIP provides flexibility to countries in how they implement and configure their systems and helps avoid vendor lock-in. Anchored at the International Institute of Information Technology, MOSIP harnesses the power of open source and embraces the best practice of scalability, security, and privacy. Right, but let me read you what it really says. Again, it is a robust, scalable, and inclusive foundational identity platform for governments to run their citizens. It hooks into your travel app, your healthcare app, and your money wallet, whatever bank you use. It incorporates all of the facial recognition. It'll go to retina eye scan. This will be the system that the social credit score will become part of in determining whether you're eligible to travel, whether you're eligible to maintain the cash in your account. The ID system will register all human beings into a centralized marketplace. I call it a marketplace because we're not sure what's going to be UN run or how this new world order is going to be, but this is launched. If you go to the Gates Foundation, look at their front page of their website today. Here's what it says. This is on the front page of the Gates Foundation as we see it. Not, we're going to help poor people. We're going to help with home building or do Habitat for Humanity type causes. Oh, no. Here's what this says. Digital IDs are the effective tool against poverty. How can that be? How can impoverished people have a digital ID and then lift them out of poverty? Simple. You identify the wealthy people, you identify the poor people, you take from the rich people, give to the poor people through the central bank digital currency FEDNOW app, which is coming. That's how you take people out of the hood, where I'm from, and you elevate them into a better hood, which is called the neighborhood. You simply say, you're no longer in Section 8 housing. You're now over here in Bel Air. And thanks to the residents and your neighbors who we took wealth from, we gave to you, you have now effectively been given an opportunity and been raised from impoverished conditions and surroundings to what? You are now part of the New World Order, the Great Reset, which is a resetting of wealth inequality. Right there it says, we will have an effective tool to raise people from poverty with digital IDs. The only way it means is you're taking from one to give to another. So Lou, that's what's going on today.
And the unfortunate part of this discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, is there's absolutely nothing we can do about this to stop it. Am I correct?
Well, I was on the phone with one of the chief of staff, was one of the more prominent members of the United States Senate. That's why I was a little bit late getting on your show here. And what we talked about was, when this starts to get out and you tell people of any means, it doesn't matter what it is, whether you have $50,000, $10,000, $5,000 in the bank, or you have billions, this system doesn't enrich your life. It doesn't increase your wealth. It takes from your wealth. That in itself should be alarming. In our conversations, we looked at this from a different standpoint. We said to ourselves, okay, how do we stop this? The way we stop it is to help support the candidates on the Republican side or whatever party says we're going to put a stop to this and go back to these people. Because this isn't about a party. This isn't about a gender. This isn't about a demographic. This is about anybody who has anything that can be taken away from them, including the potential for wealth, if not all the wealth that they currently have. And that wealth doesn't have to be more than 5 or 10 grand. What they want to do is to put you on a universal plan that gives you just enough to live on, and to systematically have it to where you're beholden to the government under universal basic income. Even if you're a successful CEO, they want to take from you to give to others. And this way they reset all of the inequalities that they feel has been so unjustifiably done over the last 200 years in this country. So to stop it, we've got to give to our candidates. You got to. It's no different than giving to the church to spread the good word. The other thing we've got to do is to try to find the candidates that we feel are so strongly aligned with our values. And that is the number one goal, whether it's $10 or you give 10,000. You've got to start doing it, because if not, this system is going to be part of mainstream economy by this time next year, as the word on the street.
Christian, I have a question for you, buddy.
Sure.
Is there bipartisan concern about this transition they're trying to force down our throat? In other words, we know what the conservative position is on this. Aren't there people on the other side of the aisle that are kind of raised up and see what's coming our way?
Say that again, Lou, because that's a big statement. Say it one more time. I got to wrap my head around that one.
That's all right. Bipartisan concern. In other words, we know people like ourselves, we're conservative. We're open-minded, but we're conservative. We have concern about this transition, what the big plan is, this redefining, redistribution, but is partisan concern. In other words, I know that you're immersed in DC. I'm not going to talk too much about your business there, but I know that you're having conversations with people periodically. Is this across the aisle that some of the people in the Democrat Party are equally concerned about this being a little short-sighted?
Yeah, it's kind of how I want to say this. I want to say this in kind of a very respectful way. there are people in Congress, there are members of our government that don't have empathy, that don't understand what it's like to actually serve the people that put them into a position of authority and power. Now, there is gaining bipartisan support. I was on the phone with somebody, again, who represents one of the leaders in the Senate on the Republican side. And what they were saying is there is now gaining more talk on the Democrats, the Libertarians, and the Independents are starting to say, listen, this is good for nobody except for just a handful of people. And we can't ensure the handful of people are aligned with our values. Even the Democrats are starting to gain a little bit of a concern on this. And my way of thinking about this is, listen, when you've got a Stalin put into a position of power, who really benefits? Just Stalin. So now you may have aligned yourself with the agenda and the ideology, what Stalin held true to his beliefs, and you ran on that campaign and you were successful and everyone gets into power. What did Stalin do? He killed 2/3 of his people over time because he couldn't trust them. So the evil will eat evil. The question is now some of the people are realizing that their own party may not be exactly what's represented and could turn on themselves, and their kids and grandkids could face the same elimination that anybody else has faced when you have dictatorships and tyranny. So this call today was a very important call. And I can tell you this, there is a growing number of Democrats, Libertarians, and Independents, along with a lot of Republicans, that are now truly understand this great reset is the reset of everybody's wealth. They didn't pick a party. They picked human beings. So now people are freaking out. Like they said, they're crapping in their pants, and now they want to do something about it.
That's why I wanted to ask you this, Christian, because that to me was a very important question. If we're going to have an offset to this agenda, so to speak. I want to take a quick break. We're going to come right back to you. I want to continue this conversation so you can further inform us as to what exactly is going on here with this transition. Guys, I want you to stick with us. I also want you to become part of this conversation. Email questions to Christian, myself, Tom Fuentes, anyone for that matter, operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. Also, when we come back, Christian will tell you how to find him as well. And we're going to take a short break.
Silver is a proven wealth preservation for hundreds of years. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We have with us Christian Briggs, Hard Asset Management, giving us an update on this transition into digital currency and some rather disturbing information about how we may be quantifying your life. Perhaps the good part of this conversation so far, if there is, Christians clearly identified that there is concern, bipartisan in nature. They're starting to realize that these policy changes, this new world order that Christian alludes to, doesn't distinguish between Republicans and Democrats, much the same way when you're the victim of a crime in a major city. And don't let me go off on a tangent, guys. It doesn't discern whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. The victim's a victim. We're going to bring Christian back and let him continue to speak on this topic. I want to introduce Tom Fuentes into this. I'm sure Tom has a perspective as well. And Christian, we could?
We are good. Let's go.
So where else are we going to go with this conversation right now, Christian? What's the offset, if there is one? What is it the American public should be preparing to do in light of this revelation today?
Okay, so let's say we can't stop this. Let's say this thing is implemented across the board and all of the things that we have thought could never happen, right? We're on the Titanic. We never can hit an iceberg. And if we do hit the iceberg, we can't sink. Oh, shit, now all of a sudden we realize we are sinking. Oh, there's not enough lifeboats. So you've got to go and be unemotional when you start to think these through. There's a reason why the central banks are buying so much gold, because when all of the CBDCs get executed on in late 24, early 25, they'll be backed by gold. Don't look at the price of gold as of today it stands. Look at the policy of gold. The policy of gold is going to be implemented against all digital currencies that are centralized in order to backstop them. None of this information is some kind of a secret. You need to go online and you can read the headlines for yourself. Start buying gold, start looking at rare coins in a different light. This isn't about wealth creation, even though systematically that's the default, which we'll do. You got to look at this from a wealth preservation. So if we're not successful at stopping this, turning this Titanic around, then what we have to do is make sure that our lifeboats are insured to be ready for us when we need them. And I'm not talking about the sky's going to fall in, but we're going to go from a capitalistic, low regulatory environment to make money and to create greater wealth and prosperity to a unbelievable hardship that makes it almost impossible to get ahead in 25 starting then, and then trying to be able to not only create the wealth, maintain the wealth. So they're going to make it almost impossible, like in Europe. The last time I heard of a company the size of Google, Facebook, any number of big high-tech success stories coming out of Europe was never. That's a fact. So when you look at who creates the greatest of wealth, the United States does. If we change our regulatory ways, in other words, if the government starts to create such a burdensome, I'll give you an example rather than just try to show or try to paint a picture. I'll give you a real world example. Take banking regulations in the United States. 10 years ago, there were 6,000 pages in regulatory understandings to operate a bank. Today, it's 15,000 pages. It is impossible for small banks to adhere to the regulatory challenges that are required to operate any bank, state or federal bank. Only the largest 2%, 3% of the banks out there, in theory, can operate in such a standard where those regulatory guidelines and laws aren't burdensome to the bank. The 95, 97% of the rest of the banks find it to be challenging, and some banks can't do it at all, and they just close their doors. They're doing over-regulating banks to systematically put them out of business or to create a monopoly in the top tier ones. That's what they're going to do with the wealth. You're going to be able to fight it for a while, and then eventually what will happen is they'll just take your wealth. So in other words, you need a lifeboat. Gold, silver, and rare coins have been shooting up. Precious metals are a wealth preservation. Rare coins preserve as well as create wealth. But again, not as much creating the wealth is what's going to happen. People will succumb to being happy with keeping what they've got. So if I'm wrong, you win. If I'm right, you win bigger. Either way, it's a win situation because we know that the metals are going to go higher, especially as we move closer and closer to the New World Order and the Great Reset.
I want to make a comment that I want to bring Tom in. You know, one of my concerns, Christian, is that the average American, those living in the heartland, and even some living on the coast, New York, LA, California in general, they're going to get blindsided by this because, as I kind of remind you, people are distracted. They're not following what we're following, which is why this podcast is so damn important. You know, we're giving information that everybody needs to become aware of. And like I say, a lot of people are going to get blindsided. One day they're going to wake up and it's just going to be in their face and they're not going to be able to do anything about it, which is why it's so critical that if it can be short-circuited, that it comes from our elected officials. So, Tom, I want to bring you into this discussion because I know you have some questions or observations yourself. Mr. Fuentes, if you would.
Well, Lou, what Christian is saying is that in order to preserve the value of your wealth, one of the best hedges to do that would be gold, silver, platinum, precious metals, rare coins, something like that. Now, if you want to have an idea of where the economy goes, especially if you're holding cash right now, when you're watching a documentary or some news show and they say that in 1910, this ship cost, $50 million to build. In today's money, that would be, $300 million or something. They give you what the inflationary cost based on cash is, depending on how far back you go. Whether you go back 10 years or you go back 110 years, the value of cash then has steadily gone down. Therefore, the price of that item, if you want to look at the other way, has steadily gone up in today's money, what it would cost to do the exact same thing, to build the exact same structure or ship or plane or whatever it might be. So therefore, the cash that you have in the bank right now, even if all these negative things don't happen and the economy just kind of cruises along like it's been for hundreds of years, the whole world economy, 10 years from now, your cash will be worth so much less. 20 years from now, even less from that. So the idea of having some type of wealth preservation is absolutely sensible. And for items like gold in particular, something that has been a preservation of wealth going back 5,000 or 10,000 years. Look at King Tut's mask in the Egyptian Museum made out of gold. And, when they talk about what that was worth then compared to what it's worth now, it gives you an idea of how gold absolutely holds its value. So, and then other reasons why gold is so significant, or silver, platinum, some of the other precious metals. But I think, what Christian is saying is pretty much kind of wake up to what's going to happen. Even if nothing bad happens, the value of your cash is going to go down, period. That's just, like a law of nature through inflation and through other, mechanisms. So the idea of trying to preserve the cash you have now, much less the second issue is that you have anonymity with that. The government can't look at it and see your checking account, your savings account like they can now, or the Internal Revenue Service with their 85,000 new agents. They can't see what you have in terms of gold or silver. That's yours. You can buy it, sell it. You can travel overseas and sell it there. The value will be, similar around the world. And so that's, I think, the big difference in terms of cash, maintaining cash and thinking you're going to survive all this in the next few years. What's been happening on a steady basis, Christian's basically saying is going to happen on a much accelerated basis. 2025, that cash is going to be worth in 2025 what might have taken till 2035 to accomplish in terms of losing value.
I want to make a quick comment, Tom, because you alluded to us waking up. That's a little bit about what this podcast is. We're trying to wake everybody up. We're using the truth as that vehicle to wake you up. And if you listen to Christian, he's really trying to wake you up. We're hoping that people are listening, and I'm hoping that people speak to other people and get them to listen to this podcast, because it's not a lot of fluff here. It's a lot of meat and potatoes and things that are clearly relevant to our future, and in particular, the future of our children. Christian, any comments on what Tom just said, my friend?
Yeah, he's exactly right. Here's what I want you, for everybody listening, I'm going to tell you the old analogy is this. If you look at gold just 2 years ago, you could have bought all you wanted at $1,275, $1,300, $1,325. You could have loaded up and you would have been fine. No problem there. Okay. So we can agree on that. We know that to be true. Now, so now you look at where gold's at, 1950. You also look at the premiums that the gold brings over the melt value. It's not terrible, but it averages between 2.5% to 7%, depending upon what form you buy it in. The fact is it's gone up. Okay, it's gone up. The fact is it's going to continue to go up, and the central banks around the world are buying the world's amount of record numbers of gold. There is a reason for that. I've said follow the money. If you buy today and gold gets to 4,000 an ounce by the end of next year, you have created wealth that goes far beyond the inflation or taxation or any of the increases in commodities and or cost of goods that you would otherwise incur. And it'll offset any decline in the equities, bonds, or real estate markets, which we know has already started to happen. What I like to tell people is this: follow the wealthiest people in the world, follow the money. If they were all buying real estate, you should follow it. If they're buying equities, follow it. But this isn't about wealth creation as much as it is about wealth preservation. $1 today has greater value than $1 tomorrow in 25, like Tom was saying. You got to start doing this now. Don't look at the daily price of gold. Look at the policy of gold. We know that paper currency will not be around in the next 3 to 5 years. In fact, there's 4 countries that have, for the most part, pretty much outlawed it altogether. There's 21 additional countries that have now on the Ripple XRP platform transacting both in part or in whole their digital currencies in a centralized system. So 21 nations have now started to adopt, utilize, get the consumer to consume something that ultimately takes away their freedom and liberties and puts the power in the hands of the government. Because when you finally get the last part of the equation, first you limit them on travel. Second, you put socialized medicine in front of them. Next thing you know, you've got the last peg in the overall scheme. Listen to me carefully. The wealth. Wealth is power. So when you take their travel ability, their health care, and their money away from them, the last thing they've got that they can use against you will be bad words, sticks and stones. And the last I checked, none of that's going to be effective against governments and the policies. So start getting your money in places to maintain your wealth, or you'll become a ward of the state.
My concern is,
if I could add to that, Lou.
Yeah.
David Rubin on his podcast just interviewed a woman who's investment banker for more than 25 years, and she's written a book based on the World Economic Forum's mission and objectives to how they're going to have the world, in their grasp, I guess. By the mission is to be by 2030, and the name of her book is "You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy." You will own nothing and be happy. And the idea, what she's trying to convey, is you need to have property, something that's going to be worth something. Now, it can be land, it can be other things, and it could be gold and silver. It has to be something more than cash, which is so easy to take away. Now, especially some of the things you could have, owning property, they're going to find a way to take away. If you own a vacant lot, or if you own a house or whatever, they'll find a way to regulate you out of it, or tax you out of it to where you'll want to sell it off. But some of the other, I think one of the things that Christian, will tell you as an expert, obviously more than me, is that it's the anonymity of these precious metals. The government doesn't have to know you have it. And therefore, if they don't know you have it, they can't take it away from you.
Tom, I go back and I say this. One of the things that really disturbs me, and I hate to be so relaxed today, guys. I'm not at the studio, in case anybody's noticed. I'm just concerned about the majority of the people in this country that are not following this conversation. I think we have so many podcasts today. People don't know what to listen to or what not to listen to. The agenda of this podcast is distinctly different than what most people are doing. We're not here to entertain you guys, although it probably is entertaining to a limited degree. We're here to educate you guys and give you food for thought. We're not trying to tell you how to think. We just want you to think. We want you to wake up and start to see what's going on around you. I'm going to give Christian a closing remark, Tom, and then you'll close the show for today. And Christian, any final comments, sir?
Well, Lou, don't ask me for final comments. That final comments could last 45 minutes. Okay, let's be realistic here, man. Okay, like I'll have those people sitting in the pews for the next 2 days if you're not careful. So here's what I'm going to say to people. If you truly understand what's coming, and you can see it as clearly as anything we've ever seen before that has been broadcasted multiple times over and over, go online. Nothing that we've said on this show is limited or is left for interpretation. All of this stuff is right there in front of you. Most people, though, would rather believe a warm lie than a cold truth. Please call Hard Asset Management. We will guarantee the unbelievable lowest prices on everything we sell. That's the given. You don't have to worry about that. But the biggest thing I want people to realize is this. If you're not preserving your wealth, the government will do it for you. They just do it a different way. They preserve it on their side of the aisle versus your side. Oh, it's there. You just don't have title to it anymore. If the Great Reset is anything to be understood, wealth inequality in this world is systematically being eradicated by taking and redistributing all the things that the top 10% of the world has to the bottom 90%. That is going to happen. It's already happening. They call it taxation, inflation, and now regulatory things that systematically destroy small businesses. So do it while you can, because as my young sister once said, who worked on a film project when she was overseas, and it wasn't the bar of soap that was handed out to the people that would go in these concentration camps, that was giving them the comfort. It was, they took everything from them before that. And that was, they had nothing to show for it. And my sister used to talk about how hard it was to understand how people were so complicit, even until the day that it happened. There's plenty of stories to talk about how the Nicholas II, the Tsar in Russia, he knew 2 years in advance that he was going to be in big trouble when he gave portions of his authority to the legislators in Russia at the time, who were nothing more than the Bolsheviks, Communist Party, who ultimately knew they were going to overthrow him, but they whittled it down to small bites each year. And then eventually they took him and his family was murdered. We're not talking about murder here, but we're talking about the systematic takeaway of everything that people have earned. And there's a reason why for 75, 80 years, the Eastern European countries had such an alcoholic problem. You know, alcoholism was rampant. When you have no hope, you've got nothing to live for. There's no point in the future, which you can clearly see as a destination of success or prosperity. They are going to take it, and they're already doing it. Its question is, are they going to take it from you, or do you have the mindset and the will to preserve your wealth? If you do, you need to call us. You can reach us. Here's my email, initial c@bmcham.com. Email me. We're happy to put one of our people in touch with you, but don't let them take what you've earned. At least take it one step forward and try to preserve that, and we'll help you do so. Take it from here, Tom. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree completely that, we have to, I think, people get apathetic, or they get bored, or they get, or they're in denial because so many things are untrue. So many things you hear in the media, so many advertisements are false. So when they hear these things, well, you should buy gold, or you should buy this, or you should do that. Nah, why should I do that? I think that's all bogus. I think that's false advertising. That person's a liar. Why should I believe that? I'll be fine. I've got $50,000 in my bank account. I have IRAs. Nobody's going to touch that. Okay, go ahead and, live under that kind of denial. And whether it's 5 years or 2030 is 5.5, 6 years from now, the World Economic Forum's goal to have this conversion happen by then. But even if it gets delayed, 2035, 2040, it's coming. And we can see it coming. We can see what these other governments are doing. We can see people in our own government saying, we're going to adopt the social credit score like China has. We're going to adopt these financial policies like are starting to turn up in the EU. We're going to gradually, slowly increase the control on your life and your wealth. And we'll do it slowly, and we'll do it with, the new procedures of FEDNOW. Oh, it's going to be so much more efficient to transfer money one bank to another, or overseas, or however you want to do it. And we'll love that efficiency. That'll be great. But in the long run, it's a trick.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it for today. This has been Operation Truth. We encourage you to please communicate with us, Operation Truth Official @gmail.com. You got to become part of this conversation, guys. If you listen to these two gentlemen today, there's a lot of insight they've provided you. My concern is getting this message out to everyone. I remind everyone, most of us, 99% of us, we're out there working, worrying about our children, feeding them, clothing them, educating them, paying your mortgages, your rent, your car payments, your taxes, your water bills, your insurances. We're a heavily distracted culture. In addition to that, we're also chasing things that aren't critically important, like your next generation of cell phone, your new flat screen TV. And Tom, I think you'll agree with me on this, and you'll have the closing remark. But we're a distracted culture, Tom, and we're hoping people will, get on board with us. And I know that the viewership is picking up. And I credit TJ Stone and Brian Williams with that. They've been the architects of moving this along. Our content's critically important, but we're hitting a break point here, ladies and gentlemen. Tom, you have the floor. But I do want to say one thing, guys, before I pass to Tom. I noticed today that the dress shirt is a little darker, uncharacteristically so. The suit's fine, tie is very sharp. I'm wondering what's going on with you here. This is not the byproduct of my commando conversation.
Yeah, I'm practically a hippie now, Luke.
Yeah, oh, sure. Oh, yeah, I'm wondering where your Scooby-Doo mystery van is. Is that parked in the driveway there?
Yeah,
Tom.
exactly.
Wrap it up, Tom. Wrap it
Well,
up, Tom.
Lou, thanks a lot. You just stirred my whole train of thought here. I had my eloquent speech all lined up to give right here at the end. I was going to say to one of your points, yeah, people are distracted today, but even if they're not that distracted, what kind of news are they getting from the mainstream media? That's the problem. If you go back to when we were young, you want to go back to the 60s, you want to go back to the Kennedy administration. I was in 7th grade, as you were when he was assassinated. But in those days, the public got their news from the 30-minute newscast at 6 p.m. every weekday, and then maybe a 30-minute at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. with their local news. That's all. You didn't have all-day news 24/7. And you look at where you got your news. Who was beloved in that time in the country? Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Huntley Brinkley Report, NBC News. W.K. Smith and Harry Reasoner, ABC News. And that was about the only news you could get. 30 minutes in the afternoon, 30 minutes, 45 minutes maybe in the evening, because they added sports at the end of the day. So people were busy. My parents were working multiple jobs all during that time, as most people had more than one job and worked hard, and there wasn't that much time to be watching TV news. But when they watched it, they usually got a much more quality news broadcast than they're getting today. So now you can watch news all day long. And, after retirement and getting ready to do podcast, or the 10 years I was a contributor at CNN, tracking all of the news that was being put out by mainstream media, and pretty much learning along the way, it was about 95% worthless. And that's where the problem is now. So even if you're not distracted, even if you want to learn all these things, if you don't have internet, you have a hard time learning anything, watching the main channels.
Yeah, you support my statement, Tom, about the problem in the country today is the media. You outlined it perfectly.
Agree.
Guys, this has been Operation Truth. Join us again next week. We encourage you to become part of this conversation, as I say redundantly through the course of this podcast. OperationTruthOfficial@gmail.com. Communicate with us, please. Thank you, guys. See you next week.